everyone, it's Daphne from Scrap and Create, and today I am here to start working on my 8.5 by 8.5 mini album featuring the Graphic 45 Kaleidoscope collection. So today we're going to focus on adding the flaps, pockets, and interactive features to the 8.5 by 8.5 mini album. I started by putting together the 8.5 by 8.5, so we won't be going through that detail. There is a video for that, but today I'm just going to focus on adding the interactive features to this album. So with that, let's go ahead and open the front and get started. And it looks like, yeah, I've got everything tagged and taped, so it shouldn't take very long at all. So we're going to start with the inside cover, and I've got a pocket that goes in the inside cover, and it is just trimmed to fit right inside the inside cover without, excuse me, without interfering with the spine. So I'm going to go ahead and put that down. And I'm actually applying this with glue. And so, so whatever I put in here won't get stuck in the tape. And if you'll notice, it's just flat. I don't have any flanges. And the reason for that is I want this pocket to be very snug. I'm only going to put a few things in here, so I don't want them to fall out. And you know the covers get the most activity. So I'm just going to put a thin bead around 3 of the 4 sides and place this on the page. Of course, my voice has been fine all day until I start to try to talk for the video. And I meant to say this, and I did it anyway. I'm going to leave about 1 inch off the edge, because I'm going to slip some paper, designer paper, right behind it. And so I'll come back and adhere that last tip after I apply the designer paper to this page. Sorry, I must have had too much coffee. My hands are not working with me here. And not a very straight edge. Part of that's because I'm standing up. I always like to start my videos standing up, just to make sure that I'm staying in frame and that you guys can hear me. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and sit down to start placing the papers. Okay, and so just the important thing here is to make sure that you steer clear of the score line here, so that the front page can open and close without restriction. Okay, and that's all we're trying to focus on here. Okay, that's in, it's flat, and it looks square. I got a little excess glue, but that will dry clear because I'm using art glitter glue, which if you are in the southern or western states, we can ship the art glitter glue now. And when I say now, I don't know when you're going to watch this video, but it's March right now, or I'm sorry, April 2nd, as a matter of fact. So we can ship that. We're still holding off on shipping to the east and northern states due to the weather. We have to have consistent above 40-degree temperatures to ship this product. Okay, so that's done. Okay, now we're on to page 1. And page 1 is a couple of pieces. So there is a flap, and I'll give you the measurement. That's 7.5 by 5. So 7.5 by 5. You're going to score at 1/2 inch on the 7.5 inch side. This is going to get adhered just inside, away from the spine, to make sure that there's no interference on the left-hand side of page 1. Left-hand side of page 1. And it doesn't have to be centered. I'm shooting for center, but I'm not going to even bother measuring it. I'm just going to eyeball it. Make sure you steer clear of the spine so the page 1 will operate smoothly, and you can open and close it without interference. Okay, that's in. There we go. So the other interactive piece for page 1 is going to be this large insert. And this insert is 7 7/8 by 11. So 7 7/8 by 11. You're going to score at 7.5. This is going to be inserted into the pocket of page 1, and the flap is going to close toward the page 1 side. And those are the 2 interactive pieces for page 1. And we're going to use a magnet to keep this closed. Okay. I've got some nice thick tape, and I'm loving it to go over my magnets because it covers the whole magnet, softening all the edges. So I'll need 2 pieces of this, one for each magnet. And my magnets are so strong, they're sticking to each other. So the magnet's going to be placed on this insert flap. And then I'm going to put one on the opposing flap here, and that's what's going to hold this closed. So I'm going to put this tape face up, and there's my magnet, found the other side, and I'm going to press it in place. And I have that new puppy I've been telling you guys about, and my goodness, does she shed, so I've got hair everywhere. So before I try to place the magnet on the flap, I'm pushing this insert to make sure it's all the way inside the pocket. And it is. And now I'm going to close this and pick up that magnet. And it's nice and snug. I'm loving it. There it is. So that is the end of page 1, and that's how it will operate. You'll have a nice big insert that also has a flap, and the flap fold over onto page 1. And then the left-hand flat holds that all in place. Okay, now on to page 2. Page 2, there's 2 flaps, and these flaps measure 5.5 by 7.5. 5.5 by 7.5, and you're going to score a 1/2 inch on the 7.5 inch side. And you're going to do that 2 times. And we're going to have one that goes up and one that goes down. And again, I'm just eyeballing this. I'm going to start with the up flap, and I'm trying to decide. I think I want the top one to be on the outside and this one, the bottom one, to be on the inside. So I'm coming over about a 1/2 inch, just eyeballing it. And the reason I do that is I don't want the edge of this flap to interfere at all with the spine. Now I'm going to turn it over, and I'll go ahead and use my white contrast to help you guys see what I just did. There is the first one. And I'm going to turn it over just so the edge is next to me and I can see where it's being placed. Get my tape backing off. Okay, and I'm looking again to come in about 1/2 inch, maybe a little more. And this is the top down. And I'm just working to go flush with the edge of the page. There it is. Okay, so that is the 2 flaps for page 2. Okay, now I want the top flap to close over the bottom one. So I'm going to place my magnet on the top one first and then marry it to the bottom. And again, I need 2 pieces of tape. Place the first magnet and then to marry it to the second. And so I think I'm going to put the magnet toward the bottom. There. It looks towards the top when it's open, actually. And when I can, I like to place my magnets not on the external page, because there is always a little bit of a bump. I put it on the inside, so it's not as obvious. Okay, now I need my second magnet. Okay, there it is. There's the second magnet. Now I'm going to flip it over, and here's my bottom up flap. I'm just going to press it into place. And there we go. So there are the 2 magnets. Just making sure you guys can see everything. And that is the end of page 2. Pretty simple. And then page 3, and part of the reason I'm going with such a simple design for this collection is it is really vibrant and bright and a lot of pattern. and I think you do it a disservice if you add too many patterns to one page. So it's quite a departure for Graphic 45, this particular collection. I like it. It's very, like I said, very vibrant, very youthful. But it's quite different from what I'm used to working with them. So this is a pocket. It goes on page 3. It's going to be adhered right to the bottom. I did put flanges on this because I'm expecting to put a fair amount of ephemera cards inside this pocket. So I have 2 flanges left and right. And that's also so I can use the full breadth of the page. If you put adhesive directly on a trim to fit piece, you actually start eating up part of the pocket space. So I've got these 2 flanges, and then it's flat on the bottom. So I'm going to run a bead of glue across the bottom. The other reason I like a bead of glue on the bottom is whatever you stick in the pocket is less likely to get hung up. Occasionally, when you have double-sided tape, when you're putting something in the pocket, you're pushing against that tape, and at some point the tape will start to roll down or grab a hold of whatever you've inserted. Okay, I'm going to use a piece of contrast here so I can see the edge of the page, and so can you. So here's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to marry up that corner and come across. The paper doesn't always behave, and it doesn't always wind up being exact, precise, because score lines can sort of change the paper length a little bit. So what I like to do is the eye is typically drawn to the edge of the page, so I'm looking to make sure these 2 corners are nice and tidy, and any errors I have, I try to move toward the center or toward the spine. So that is what I'm working on. And as usual, I can't see the edge, so I'm going to turn it so I can see better. Okay, now I've got one corner down, so I've got a little time to wiggle this back and forth until I'm happy with its location and that it's flush with the page. There we go. Pretty happy with that. There. That turned out very nice. It doesn't always work out this well, but it actually came right up to the edge, right to the score line of the page. So it looks very clean. So that's in. So that's a very simple page. It's just a pocket. Now we're going to go over, I'm going to press that down a little. Okay, next page. This is we are now in the center of the book. Okay. So page 4 is going to have a flap applied to the right-hand side of that page. So it's going to go flap over to the left. And then page 4 also has a large insert. And again, the insert is 7 7/8. And that's just so it'll fit inside the 8x8 pocket. So it's just shy of 8 inches. And then this is 11, and you're going to score at 7. I'm going to slip that in. And this matters because we're going to apply a magnet to this. The fold at 7.5 is going to come across. You know what, my glue didn't catch down here. I'm coming back to add a little bit more. I wasn't fast enough, and it dried. So I could see it was gapping. So I'm going to go ahead and fix that right now. That's all I needed was just a tad. Anyway, so the insert comes in and folds over onto page 4. Okay, so it's really page 2 of the second pocket page, but it folds over onto page 4. That's a little confusing, but that's the way it works. So we're going to apply this roughly to the center, and it's the same as page 1. It's going to flap over. We're going to use a magnet on these 2 pieces to keep it closed. And I'm going to put the cap on my glue because we won't need that for a little while. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and adhere the flap. And the flap is 5 by 7.5 by 5. 5 by 7.5. We're going to score 1/2 inch on the 7.5 inch side. I'm going to turn this so that I can see the edge I'm applying it to, which is toward the spine. It's going to be centered roughly. It doesn't have to be precise. However, we are actually, I'm going to take that back. I'm going to apply this one toward the top. We have a mirror page here, and I'm going to apply the flap on the other side to the bottom. And you'll see what I mean in just a moment. Okay, and I'm just making sure I'm steering clear of the spine so this page will flip open and closed nicely. Okay, that's in. So now I need 2 pieces of tape and 2 magnets to finish this page up. And then we're going to do the same thing on the opposite page, but we're going to take that flap and shift it down. And there, I don't know why, but there's something about this particular album I'm working on that reminds me of my Imagine album, which I did quite some time ago. Okay, you're going to make sure your insert is all the way in the pocket, pushing it down before you place the magnet on the opposing side. Okay. Again, I'm going to push, and I'm going to close this gently, press down. Okay, that's how that's going to go. Now we're going to do the same thing over here, only I'm going to shift this pocket down a little bit so they're off-centered a little. Same design, but slightly off-center. I'm going to turn it towards me so I can see the spine clearly. And I am going to measure this one real quick. I'm going to see how far I came down. And it looks like about 3/4 of an inch. So that's roughly what I'll do here. And if you don't have the confidence to eyeball it, just put your little tick mark there. Okay. Here's why I did it this way. Because in my mind it's easier than trying to get these two to line up across this span. So I think it looks, you either deliberately offset it or you work really hard to make sure these two line up perfectly. And to me, this is a much easier solution. I also think visually it's more interesting. So that's my thought process and that design. Okay, we're gonna need 2 more magnets. And 1 more insert. Again, 7 7/8 by 11, score at 7.5. It's going to go into this pocket, and the flap that we created at the 7.5 mark is going to close over onto page 5, just like so. And we are going to place a magnet here, and here it is. I misplaced my other magnet, and I have 1 more that will keep this flap in place. So I'm just pushing it to make sure it's all the way into the pocket before I put the flap over and press it into place. There we go. That's done. So that is page 4 and page 5. Okay, now we're on to page 6. And I have to double check something. Page 6. Yep. Yeah. Page 6 is a simple pocket that gets applied directly to the page. And I did the same thing here. I've got 2 flanges, and I'm going to run a bead of glue across the bottom. And it's going to go right here on page 6. And I think I put my... Did I do that? I think, yeah. I actually applied my tape all the way to the top, which I didn't mean to do. I actually meant to leave a tag there so that I can slip the designer paper in. So I am going to remove all but a small sliver of tape, like so. And I should have done that on the first one. Now when I apply it, I'll be able to slip some paper actually behind this easily. And I will probably wind up lifting the tape on the other page for the desired result, but it's a lot easier if you think of it before. Okay, so this is just simple pocket. Again, a bead of glue, and as I talked about, that's because sometimes whatever you're sticking in the pocket can come and get stuck to your tape down here, or eventually push your tape out of off the other piece of paper. I have some little tape that folded over on me. Okay. And this is another example of where I want to focus on this corner, and then if I have any alignment issues, I want to push it toward the spine, because your eye is always drawn to the outside edge of the page. Make sure I've got the right, yeah. I want to make sure I'm gluing down the right section and not accidentally gluing the top closed. All right, there we go. I'm going to come across and push that into place. Okay, that's all in. That's page 6. Very straightforward. And again, we'll have lots of pretty ephemera backed photo mats here. So there'll be lots of color, even though it's a very simple page. Okay, so now we're on to page 7, and page 7 is a up-down flap, just like we had on page 2. I'm going to put the cap on my glue. And so it's the same thing I typically do with my designs. I do 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 3, 2, 1. So it's just a mirror image backing through the album. So, okay, I'm going to go ahead and get the tape off both of these. And let me double check how I laid that. So the top flap is toward the outside, so I'm going to put the top flap toward the outside here. It's not critical, but I like the symmetry of that. And it looks like a little over 1/2 inch. And here's the other reason why I like to turn my book over, so you don't see the top of my head. Okay, there we go. That's in. And now do the second flap. Nice and smooth. And then I want the top flap to hold everything in place. So I'll apply my magnet to that first. Okay, just making sure, there's my magnets, just making sure this flap is flat before I close it over and press it into place. Okay, there you go. So there's the magnet on the top. Here's the magnet on the opposing page. And actually, I made my tape too big, so I'm going to trim that down real quick because it was hanging over. And I don't want that, I don't want it interfering with the matte border. So I just trimmed it down real quick. And that was easy to do because I hadn't burnished it in place. Okay, that's it. And now the last page is a mirror of the first page. We have this large photo mat, which is 7 7/8 by 11, score at 7.5. Score at 7.5. So on the 11-inch side. Okay, so this is the 4th one of these that we've done. So there's an insert for every pocket that we have. And then I'm only choosing which way the flap goes, whether it's a design feature for one side of the page or the other. In this case, it's a design feature for page 8. Okay, so page 8, like I said, is same as page 5. I've got a flap that's going to close over the insert to hold it in place. And just eyeballing it for center. Since it doesn't have a companion page, you don't really have to worry about the alignment. It really is just for this page. Okay, I need 2 magnets to hold this in place. And I'll start by putting one on this page. I'm going to move my magnet over. It wasn't quite centered, and the whole point of using this tape is having the tape go all the way around the magnet to soften its edge. Okay, I did it that time. All right, as you can see, the album's getting some bulk to it, so I'm going to press this down. Make sure it's all the way in the pocket, and press the page down. There we go. Okay, and that is the end of page 8. And then the last thing, same as page, the inside cover, is it's a simple pocket that's going to get adhered directly to the back cover, and it's going to be glued down on 3 sides. And this measures, it's 3 inches, and then it's just trimmed to fit. And that is just under 8.5 inches. And you know, I just want to make sure when I'm trimming it that I'm outside of the score line here, or the hinge of the spine. So it's just under 8.5 inches because that's the size of the cover. And just a little bit of glue on 3 out of the 4 sides. To hold it in place. Okay, I'm just lightly pressing it down, and I really want to focus on staying out of this so that the front cover or back cover will operate without any hang-ups here. And it's in. Okay. It's in, and I also did the same thing. I don't really want to glue the last inch in place because I'm going to slide some designer paper behind it. So I just wiped some of that off. But the rest of it's in. Okay. So I'm going to slide a little bit of designer paper, or is it? I guess I didn't get enough glue on this side. Designer paper slightly behind the pocket. There. Yeah, the rest of it's down. Okay, that concludes the interactive pieces for the Kaleidoscope album. And in my next video, I will come back and I will start adding all my designer features or designer paper to the album. So thanks for tuning in. I'm looking forward to completing this album. I think you guys are going to love it. The paper is gorgeous. It's extremely vibrant. I had a lot of fun working with it, and I think you will too. So my next album or next video will be adding in the designer sheets. Thanks.